terms of the property manifesto, the reason why it's so special in terms of a property issue is because it actually, free speech is a product of all 4 of your property rights. It's not just one or the other, like, your right to exclude from your property or like to kick trespassers off your property, like that's pretty much just your real property right. But your free speech, it's your real property, it's your personal property, it's your body, and it's your mind. So let's talk about it, shall we? So in terms of real property, this is really easy stuff, to be able to control, enjoy, all of that kind of stuff on your land. You get to say whatever you want on your own land, right? It's one thing if you're like blasting a megaphone and shouting things into like your neighbor's yard where you're like disrupting their, right to enjoy their land. But in general, if you're within your house, you can talk about whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. That's your property, and you can control, who's there. So if that's one of those things. It's like if you don't like someone else's speech, you can kick them off of your property. But you can say whatever kind of speech you want on your own property. And there's no better evidence of this than this. There's this house that I drive by every time I go to where my parents live, in my parents' neighborhood. And it's like kind of a little baby ranch. They have horses or whatever. But they always put up huge political signs. And they are hilarious. I remember when Obama was elected. This is so stupid. They put up like a mannequin of someone like flashing somebody, like just showing their bare ass. And it was like, what do you think of this, Obama, and all your drones? Like it was something crazy like that. But that's one of those things. It's like, if you want to put a mannequin of like someone flashing the road on your property, like that's your free speech actually, and that's your real property, free speech. That's an example of it. In terms of personal property, think about like your cell phone, right? So if you were talking to, like if I pick this up and call my husband, I call my parents, I can say whatever I want to them. The government can't, or shouldn't rather, if they're not violating your personal property rights, tell you how you can use or control your personal property or enjoy your personal property. And it's the same thing, with, I have my notes here. Oh, sorry. I have my notes here for the podcast. This is me utilizing my personal property for my freedom of speech, because I am using my pen, my paper, all of that to express my ideas. And here's the other thing too. All of these cameras, utilizing the computer. I mean, it's actually not my computer. It's Edgar's computer. He's given me an easement on the computer. But all of this stuff is me and Edgar utilizing our personal property to, express and use our free speech, our freedom of speech. So those are kind of those two. They're pretty basic. In terms of your property of body, it makes sense, right? I mean, you have the right to control your body, so you control your mouth, your tongue, your voice. Just think about if you're, I'm a classically trained opera singer, which I know is kind of a strange fun fact. But yeah, so in college, I was in Carmen, I was in the Magic Flute, and you have to actually exercise a lot of control over your body to be able to sing like that. And when you're doing voice lessons, it's all about essentially learning how to control your vocal cords in a way where you can project to a massive crowd like that, or in a massive, why can't I think of the word? Oh, a venue like that as an opera singer. And even like my testimony today, that was me using my body. I had to use some self-restraint in my body to not swear. But that was me speaking, using my body, my physical presence to use my freedom of speech. So that's that. And in terms
you didn't cuss?
Huh?
You didn't cuss?
I did not cuss.
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
I thought you said you never did that.
No, I've done it, but I don't agree with the process. So I've done it. And that's really why I know nothing's going to happen. In fact, my friend was the chairman, and that's probably why I didn't get kicked out. He was the chairman of that committee.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a Democrat. So he knew I was going to go in there and talk some shit. And I told him that they were all full of shit.
That's your free speech, man.
Yeah. He said the only reason I didn't kick you out was because I know you.
Well, it's probably true. And actually, this is something that I found out from Antonia, and I guess I should have known about it, but it's in Texas, so I don't pay attention to Texas as much. But
No one should.
I know, people care too much about Texas, whatever. But in essence, it was a situation similar to what I did today, where someone went in, and this is a free speech issue, but someone went in and they had a shirt that said "fuck the police" on, and they were testifying. I guess it was pro-gun in some fashion. But as a result of that, they now changed the rules and said that you can't, he wouldn't be allowed to wear that shirt and have testimony. But this is a whole free speech issue, right? Because especially in terms of our jurisprudence, that's public property.
Well, do you know that in our chamber, if you went there with anything political, any political message?
Yeah, you're not allowed to wear political stuff in our chamber. It was, I got that notice when I found out that this was happening, and I looked into the procedure. I found out that I was. I mean, I don't really wear political stuff anyway, but I think it's one of those things where I think that if wearing a shirt, especially, it's one thing if you're up in there making a big ruckus, because people are there to try to express their opinions, and if we are going to have a legislative process where people can come in and say their piece, we don't want it to be a circus. But if it's on a t-shirt, I mean, that's not affecting anybody. The only people who could even see it are the committee members. It's like, ooh, heaven forbid I have to see a swear word. Or that I have to see something against the police, or that I would have to see something political. But that was one thing that I thought was interesting, just to go back to that for a second. When I finished my testimony, people tried to applaud. And I only bring that up because the chairman was like, we don't applaud. He was like, because people have differing political views on this, we don't applaud testimony. Which I guess it's fair enough. I mean, it's not a debate stage. It's not televised, but I just think it's interesting. It's people can't express their approval for what was said. So anyway, those are all, whether or not the rules within the decorum of the legislature need to change is a totally different situation, because that whole thing's a mess. But in terms of your mind, property of mind, to get back to that, this is really kind of the development of what you're going to say. So, I spent a decent amount of time thinking about what I was going to talk about tonight, deciding the topics. And ultimately, even right now, just to speak, you have to use your consciousness to be able to form your sentences. Because, I mean, realistically, I'm up here talking for an hour or so. And this is all, you guys are basically hearing my stream of consciousness on these particular issues. And that is my property of mind. My ability and freedom to express my stream of consciousness verbally is my freedom of speech. So the freedom of speech is not an exclusionary property right. It's really one more about enjoyment and control of your property. And obviously, you can get into some of the stuff like conveying your speech. I mean, that's selling books, all of that kind of stuff. But I want to make clear that it's not, the freedom of speech is not a freedom in which you get to tell other people what their speech can be. Just, and this gets into things like what's been happening in the transgender argument about pronouns. And the truth is, like I said in my, I think it was my property of body, little. I was going to say lecture. It's not a lecture, okay? In my explanation of the property of body, I think I discussed this briefly when I was talking about transgenderism. But the truth is, I would use whatever pronoun someone wants because, quite frankly, I don't care. I'll refer to you however you want. I might accidentally mess up, but it wouldn't be malicious, you know? I genuinely would try. I try to not offend people if I can help it. But for any kind of government or authoritarian institution to force you to speak a certain way would be a violation of your freedom of speech, not an enforcement of it. So it's not, it's like, there's no really like a right to exclude from my freedom of speech, except to the extent that no one can force you to speak. And that's kind of the basis of our Fifth Amendment, right? But that has been so destroyed over time too. But the whole idea is like, we can't force you to testify against yourself. And that's really a violation of your freedom of speech because, I mean, think about it. They're making you use your body and your mind to say things that would incriminate yourself. I can't think of a bigger violation of your, of your property rights than that, or your property of body and mind than that. But what's happened with our Fifth Amendment, and I don't know if you guys know this, but the Supreme Court has legislated that just to death. Like, they have beaten that horse to death such that it only applies to a criminal trial. Right? So it actually has to be an incriminating speech. You have to be the defendant. Like, you actually have to be the one being incriminated. And you know what I mean? It's like they've picked it apart to the point where it only applies in very limited circumstances where you can even invoke it. You can't invoke it at all in a civil case. And personally, I think that this is some dangerous stuff because this is actually what got Irwin Schiff in trouble. But I actually think that the IRS violates the freedom of speech and the Fifth Amendment. And it's because they're forcing you to speak, right? They're forcing you to fill out a document with all, first of all, okay, not only are they forcing you to speak, they're forcing you to disclose private information. Every dime you made that year, you have to disclose by force. How is that not a violation of our freedom of speech? I don't understand that. But it certainly would be a violation of our freedom of speech in a property rights state. I mean, also because they're stealing your money. So that's your personal property. That's why taxation is theft. But yeah, so that's a little bit about free speech and that particular issue. I want to make sure that I hit on all of the bundle of sticks, though. I talked about control, possess. I mean, you possess your speech. That's a little bit harder. I mean, obviously you possess you possess your speech to the extent that it's transferred into a tangible medium that I can have here, but otherwise it just kind of goes into space, right? Like the sound waves just go on and you can't really possess it anymore. But in general, you possess your speech. So that's all part of it. I think I covered all of that, other than the right to destroy, I guess, which would be more so that if I wanted to delete all of these podcasts, I could. If I wanted to burn my notes, I could. And people try to, have their right to destroy with freedom of speech all the time because they try to retract things they say constantly. I didn't mean that. I want to take that back. So anyway, that's a little bit about that particular issue. But really, it's like the freedom of speech is so crucial, man. I think that it's your foundational liberty. It's your liberty to express your consciousness with all to express your consciousness and all other forms of your property. And I talked about real property and all of that, and it gets into different issues. Because, and I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't even, in my property manifesto, like public property is a whole issue that we're going to have to discuss in a different podcast, okay? So to the extent that freedom of speech extends to public property, that's a different issue. But in terms of your own body, your own mind, what you do with your phone, what you do with your, your notebooks, all of that, that is all your property right, and part of why all rights are property rights.